Spike Lee's School Daze looks like a joyful campus musical, but its production hid real fights and real prejudice most fans never heard about. Today, you'll uncover 15 revelations that will change how you see this 1988 classic, including actors who turned violent for real on camera. And stick around for a bonus fact almost nobody talks about, one that links this movie to a modern pop superstar. So let's get into it, because the list starts right now. Number 1. Actors fought for real. Picture a scene so tense that the director didn't even need to ask for a second take. That's exactly what happened during the explosive step show confrontation between two rival crews in School Daze. The physical clash you see on screen wasn't written into the script, and it wasn't rehearsed or choreographed by any stunt coordinator. It was genuine hostility between two groups of cast members, hostility that had been quietly building for weeks, and finally boiled over the moment the cameras started rolling. Spike Lee had actually engineered this tension on purpose, long before anyone threw a punch. He housed the actors playing the lighter-skinned characters in noticeably better hotel rooms than the actors playing the darker-skinned characters, mirroring the exact color divide the story was built around. When the real fight broke out mid-scene, Lee made a split-second call that changed the moment forever. Instead of yelling "cut," he told his camera operators to keep rolling. That decision captured a level of raw, unscripted intensity no amount of acting could fake. It's the kind of accidental authenticity most directors only dream about, and it happened because Lee had quietly set the conditions for it himself. Plenty of filmmakers talk about wanting raw, unfiltered emotion from their cast, but very few are willing to engineer real-world friction to get it, and fewer still are willing to keep the cameras running once things actually turn physical. Number 2. Hotels were segregated by role. Here's where it gets interesting, because that hotel trick from Fact 1 wasn't a one-time thing. It was Lee's entire strategy for the whole production. Cast members playing the lighter-skinned, more privileged characters were booked into nicer rooms with better amenities, while performers playing the darker-skinned characters were given noticeably lesser accommodations. This wasn't a budget mistake. It was a calculated psychological setup meant to make the actors actually feel the class and color divide the film was exploring. Similar tactics had reportedly been used on other Hollywood sets to stir up authentic rivalry between characters. But Lee pushed the idea further than most directors would dare. The disparity in comfort wasn't subtle, and the actors noticed immediately. Room service, bedding, even the general upkeep of the space became daily reminders of who the production valued more, at least on paper. That manufactured inequality bled straight into the performances, giving the film's most charged scenes a level of real resentment that no line of dialogue could have written in. It's an uncomfortable method, but it's hard to argue it didn't work exactly as intended. If you are enjoying this, take 2 seconds and leave a like. Subscribe if you want more videos like this. That support really motivates my work and helps a lot with bringing more content. Number 3. Kicked off campus for colorism. Now for the wild part, because the most shocking controversy behind School Daze didn't happen on set at all. It happened when Spike Lee's own alma mater banned the production after only 2 weeks of filming. Morehouse College's president at the time objected to several choices Lee had made, but his sharpest complaint was about the actor cast to play the fictional college president. According to Lee, the real president said he didn't like that the actor looked too dark for the role, using language soaked in the exact prejudice the film was built to criticize. Lee has said this conversation happened to his face at his own former school while he was pleading to keep filming there. The irony was impossible to miss. A movie about colorism inside the Black community was being shut down by a Black institution for reasons rooted in that same colorism. After Morehouse, Spelman, Clark Atlanta, and Morris Brown all pulled their support, Lee had to relocate and finish shooting at Atlanta University instead. He reportedly wasn't welcome back to Morehouse for years, not until long after that president had left his post. Sometimes the story behind the camera says more than the one in front of it, and this is a case where the behind-the-scenes drama practically became its own subplot, one Lee never could have scripted even if he'd wanted to. Number 4. Jesse Jackson blessed the set. But here's the thing, not everyone in the community turned their back on this project. In the middle of Lee's most turbulent stretch of filming, with college administrators furious and cast tensions boiling, an unexpected visitor showed up on the Atlanta set. Civil rights leader Jesse Jackson personally traveled to the location to offer his support and, in Lee's own retelling, to bless the troubled production. His timing mattered enormously. Several historically black colleges were publicly criticizing the film for its raw language and its unflinching look at colorism and class divisions within the black community, and some worried it was airing conversations that should stay private. Jackson's visit carried real symbolic weight given the film's own themes about consciousness and activism. He seemed to understand exactly what Lee was trying to do: force an uncomfortable but necessary conversation into the open. That endorsement gave Lee something he badly needed in that moment: validation from a towering figure in the very community that was pushing back hardest. It's a reminder that even the most controversial art can find unexpected allies when it's telling an honest truth. Number 5. 500 extras became a crowd of thousands. Now check this out, because what looks like an army of extras in this film's biggest musical numbers is actually a clever illusion. Cinematographer Ernest Dickerson only had around 500 extras to work with, yet on screen those crowds looked 10 times larger. He pulled this off using elevated camera angles, strategic lighting, and choreography that recycled the same groups of people through different parts of the frame without making it obvious. This wasn't just a fun trick. It was a necessity. The film had a budget of $6.1 million, respectable for an independent production, but tight for a musical with 8 major numbers and crowd scenes stretching for a quarter mile into the darkness. Dickerson had cut his teeth on ultra-low-budget films shot in under a month, so squeezing maximum scale out of minimum resources was already second nature to him. Industry observers later said the finished film looked like a $15 million production despite costing a fraction of that. That's the kind of craftsmanship that never shows up in the credits, but shapes everything you see on screen. And it's a technique still studied by low-budget filmmakers today who need their crowd scenes to punch far above their actual head count. Number 6. Vanessa Williams almost played the lead. Now for a casting story that could have completely changed this movie. Before Tisha Campbell ever stepped into the role of Jane, Spike Lee had originally cast former Miss America winner Vanessa Williams in the part. She ultimately walked away from the project, and the timing tells you a lot about why. Williams was still recovering from the fallout of a major scandal that had cost her the Miss America title after unauthorized photos of her were published without her consent, and she was actively working to rebuild her public image. The role required several intimate scenes, including one where her character is pressured into a fraternity-related encounter, and by most accounts, Williams wasn't comfortable revisiting that kind of material while trying to launch a serious music career. Her debut album was scheduled to drop the same year this film would hit theaters, which only raised the stakes. Some reports have also suggested she was expecting her first child around this time, which may have influenced her decision, though that detail remains more speculation than confirmed fact. When she stepped away, Lee turned to Tisha Campbell, whose singing had impressed him in an earlier stage production, and the rest became movie history. Number 7. A studio first for black directors. Here's where the scale of this achievement really hits you. School Daze became the first major studio-funded musical ever directed by a black filmmaker, and that milestone says a lot about how narrow the industry's doors had been. Musicals had existed in Hollywood since the earliest days of talking pictures, spanning decades of lavish productions with huge casts and massive budgets, yet none of them had ever been placed in the hands of a black director until this film came along. What makes it even more remarkable is where Lee was in his career at the time. His only previous feature had been a scrappy independent hit made for well under $200,000. Jumping from that to a full studio musical was an enormous leap of faith from the people financing it, and a clear signal that Lee's vision was seen as commercially viable at the highest level. This breakthrough didn't just make one film possible, it cracked open a door that had been sealed for the entire history of the genre, proving that stories like this one could carry both artistic weight and mainstream box office appeal. In hindsight, film historians often point to this moment as one of the earliest proof points that studios could bankroll a black director on a genre traditionally reserved for the industry's biggest names, a precedent that took years to fully pay off across Hollywood. Number 8, a $550,000 lawsuit over one song. But wait, there's more, and this part of the story turns ugly fast. Just months after the film hit theaters, Tisha Campbell filed a lawsuit against Spike Lee seeking $550,000, claiming she was never paid or credited for her vocal contribution to the soundtrack, specifically her work on the song Be Alone Tonight. The lawsuit landed in the summer of 1988 and cast a shadow over what should have been a moment of career momentum for Campbell, whose singing in this film had just proven she could carry both drama and music with equal skill. Her claim centered on the idea that her musical work went beyond her acting role and deserved separate compensation and recognition in the credits, terms she believed had been promised during production. This kind of dispute is more common in independent filmmaking than people realize, where informal verbal agreements about extra contributions can fall apart the moment real money and credit are on the line. Whatever the resolution, the lawsuit exposed a messier side of a project that, on screen, looked like a celebration of unity and talent. A reminder that the Polish audiences see in a finished film rarely reflects the financial tangles happening behind the scenes. If you are enjoying this, take 2 seconds and leave a like. Subscribe if you want more videos like this. That support really motivates my work and helps a lot with bringing more content. Number 9. A fashion icon designed the gowns. Now check this out, because the costuming in this film had a level of pedigree you wouldn't expect from an independent production. Spike Lee personally brought in acclaimed designer Willie Smith, one of the most respected black fashion designers of the era, to create the elaborate gowns worn during the film's homecoming coronation sequence. Smith had already built a reputation for clean lines and sophisticated yet accessible style through his own label, making him a natural fit for costumes meant to capture real glamour and prestige. This wasn't just about making the cast look good on camera. Homecoming at historically black colleges is a major cultural event where fashion carries real weight, and Lee wanted that authenticity reflected honestly rather than approximated. Smith's contribution worked alongside costume designer Ruthie Carter, who had drawn from real uniforms and traditions found across historically black campuses nationwide. Together, their work grounded even the film's most theatrical musical sequences in something recognizably real, giving the production a visual credibility that elevated it well beyond its independent roots. Number 10. The last word became the next film's first. Here's a detail even longtime fans of Spike Lee often miss. The very final word spoken in School Daze is "wake up," delivered as the lead character breaks the fourth wall and speaks straight to the audience. 1 year later, that exact same word became the opening line of Lee's next film, Do the Right Thing, spoken as the very first piece of dialogue. This wasn't a coincidence or a cute callback. It was a deliberate thematic bridge between two projects that both wrestle with racial tension and the need for social awareness. By repeating that single phrase, Massimo Phrases, Lee essentially created his own directorial signature, a call to attention that would echo through much of his later work. He's spoken about weaving similar messaging into film after film, using it almost like a thread tying his entire body of work together. The connection between these two particular films runs deeper than the wording too. One examines division within a black community on a college campus, while the other expands that lens to an entire Brooklyn neighborhood, showing an artist evolving in scope while never losing his central message. It's the kind of connective tissue between projects that only becomes visible once you know to look for it, and it's rewarded generations of film students who've made a habit of tracing Lee's recurring motifs across his entire filmography. Number 11. The cast reunited on campus TV. Now here's a crossover most viewers never clock until someone points it out. Several actors from this film went on to become core cast members of a beloved television series set at a fictional, historically black college, essentially continuing the same conversation in a new format. The timing lined up almost perfectly since that show was just launching its first season around the same time this movie hit theaters. Multiple lead performers carried their chemistry straight from this production onto the small screen, and a handful of supporting cast members made guest appearances across the show's 6-season run as well. This overlap wasn't a coincidence of casting directors being lazy. Both productions were drawing from the same small pool of young black actors who could authentically portray college life and its social complexities. That shared talent pool ended up shaping an entire era's aesthetic for how historically black college stories were told on screen, linking a feature film and a network sitcom in a way that still gets discovered by new viewers today. Number 12. A one-hit wonder topped the charts. Now for a music story with an ending nobody could have predicted. A go-go track written specifically for this film's soundtrack climbed all the way to number 1 on the R&B chart and even cracked the pop chart, introducing an entire regional sound to national audiences who had never heard anything like it. Decades later, a music network ranked it among the greatest one-hit wonders of its decade. But the real twist came more than 30 years after release, during a televised trivia segment at a major awards show. When the song started playing, veteran actress Glenn Close not only identified it instantly, but stood up and performed its signature dance moves with startling precision. The clip went viral within hours, with millions of people sharing footage of a legendary dramatic actress busting out choreography from an 80s dance track. The band's frontman later said, "Watching the moment unfold felt like winning the lottery," and he gave her performance a perfect score. It's proof that a single scene from this film could resurface decades later and still catch an entire generation completely off guard, turning a forgotten deep cut into a trending topic overnight, decades after most casual viewers had assumed the song was long forgotten. Number 13. An actress didn't know the slur, but here's the thing that really shows how deep this film's subject matter cut. Tisha Campbell has admitted she genuinely didn't know the meaning of the central slur her character uses throughout the story when she first signed on to the project. That admission says a lot about how far Lee was pushing into territory many people, even within the black community, rarely discussed openly. The term itself is a derogatory slur historically aimed at darker-skinned black people, and in this story, it becomes central to exploring how light-skinned and dark-skinned characters treat each other with real hostility. Campbell's unfamiliarity with the word reflected how sheltered some performers were from a form of intra-racial prejudice that Lee wanted dragged into the light. In a strange way, her lack of prior context ended up working in the film's favor. She had to genuinely grapple with the weight of the word during filming rather than simply performing familiarity with it, which brought a raw, more honest reaction to some of the story's most painful scenes. Quick reminder to subscribe if you are enjoying these revelations. And tell me in the comments, do you know any strange fact about this movie that I didn't mention? Let's build the list together. Number 14. Knee pads were the actor's idea. Now for a small detail that became one of the film's most visually memorable choices, and it wasn't even in the costume plan. During the elaborate dance number that pits straight hair against natural hair as a stand-in for beauty standards, two of the lead actresses wore matching knee pads that costume designer Ruthie Carter never actually designed. The choreography demanded a lot of floor work, spinning, and dramatic poses that would have been painful or even risky on a hard soundstage floor. Rather than push through the discomfort, the actresses added the knee pads themselves as a practical fix, and the look ended up sticking. What's interesting is how naturally that improvised choice fit the scene's tone. The pads gave the performers an almost athletic, competitive edge that matched the battle-like energy of two groups fighting over identity and beauty standards. It's a small reminder that some of the most iconic visual choices in film history weren't handed down by a director or a costume department at all. They came from performers solving a practical problem in the moment, almost at the end. And the best is still coming. Subscribe so you don't miss what's next. And drop your city or country in the comments. I want to see how far this video is reaching. Number 15. A pop star recreated the film. And now, the fact almost nobody talks about. The one we teased at the very start. 2 decades after this film hit theaters, R&B superstar Alicia Keys paid tribute to it in the most direct way possible by recreating several of its most iconic scenes shot for shot in her music video for Teenage Love Affair. This wasn't a vague homage or a passing reference. Keys meticulously rebuilt the campus rally scene where the lead character leads a demonstration, recreated the intimate pajama party sequence, where the female characters bond over college life, and restaged the elaborate homecoming coronation performance almost beat for beat. The level of detail in her recreation showed just how deeply this film had shaped her own artistic sensibility growing up. Her tribute did double duty too, celebrating the original film's legacy while introducing its themes and visual language to an entirely new generation of viewers who might never have seen Spike Lee's original work. It's the clearest proof that this movie's influence never stayed contained to 1988. It kept resurfacing in music, television, and pop culture for decades, proving that a story about identity and colorism inside one community could ripple outward for over 30 years, quietly shaping the work of artists who weren't even born when the film first hit theaters. And those were 15 strange facts about school days. This film matters more than most people give it credit for, because it forced an uncomfortable conversation about colorism into the open decades before that conversation became mainstream, both on screen and, as it turns out, behind the camera too. If you made it this far, leave a like, subscribe, and comment which fact surprised you the most. And don't forget to suggest another movie that deserves a list of strange facts. See you in the next video.